Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to the show. Anthony here.
And James here. Today's episode is going to be on Pixar's Coco, which is, in my opinion, a top 5 Pixar movie. This one hits me in all the right places. It's emotional. It's hilarious. The animation is absolutely exceptional. And I really just love every moment of this film. And it really breaks my heart multiple times. My heart, as well as the last 5 minutes, leaves me in tears every time I watch this film.
It's funny because I'd seen it a couple of times, and it's in my top 3 for Pixar. I have it at number 3. I have Ratatouille's my favorite, then the first Toy Story, then Coco.
It's a good list.
Yeah, I think it's a solid list. And I mean, this movie is it's a special Pixar movie. I think it's one of the best things Disney has done, I think, in the last 20 years. But it's just so emotional because I was watching it this morning while I was doing something else. I was writing in some documents and doing some boring work, and I had it on the background.
As a refresher.
Yeah, as a refresher to just catch up, get back up to speed because I didn't have time to just watch it on its own. So I was multitasking, and by the last 10 minutes, I was sobbing, just like, oh my god, I couldn't stop crying, and it just hits you. It has such great themes about family and love and tradition and remembrance. Obviously, I think the main theme of the film is clearly remembering your family, remembering your loved ones even when they've passed away, and passing that memory on to the new members of the family so that nobody has ever forgotten. It's a really powerful theme that I hadn't seen in any kind of kids movie before. We've seen death here and there, but I think that was a really specific, complex theme that they were putting into this movie that was a little different from others.
Coco came out in 2017. It was directed by Lee Unkrich and Adrian Molina, written by Lee Unkrich, Jason Katz, Matthew Aldrich, and Adrian Molina. Despite his family's generations-old ban on music, young Miguel dreams of becoming an accomplished musician just like his idol Ernesto de la Cruz. Desperate to prove his talent, Miguel finds himself in the stunning and colorful land of the dead. After meeting a charming trickster named Hector, the two new friends embark on an extraordinary journey to unlock the real story behind Miguel's family history. On IMDb, Coco is at an 8.4, and it's number 74 on the all-time IMDb user rating list. Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 97% critic score, 94% audience score. This film also won 2 Academy Awards. It won Best Animated Feature and also Best Original Song for Remember Me. And global box office, this cleaned up with $807 million internationally. So very well received film, highly successful, and like we said, one of Pixar's best.
And I like how in the last several years, Pixar and Disney have been branching out to other cultures. This is one of those first films. I mean, we got Encanto, we got Luca with the Italian culture. So I like how Pixar is branching out to every walk of life on the planet, and so that everyone's stories can be told with their form, with their medium, and with their exposure, and with their incredible storytelling artists. And this film also, I think, is really special in terms of its animation. The lighting of this film, I think, when I saw that for the first time, it just stood out in terms of Pixar films. This one in Toy Story 4. I found extremely impressive, the cinematography, the digital lenses in this film, and incredible precise lighting techniques that are so true to real life lights. It's really remarkable to see how they can light scenes, and it feels like there's just like a camera on set of this like animated world sometimes. Creativity of the Land of the Dead is just breathtaking, and it's I think the visually the most stunning Pixar film to date. It's just really miraculous once the film gets going and you're in this other realm. I'd never seen anything like it before for animated films, and I think it was just really stunning.
I think it's their best-looking movie of all time. I mean, Ratatouille was the first Pixar film to start exploring like real cinematography and creating those digital lenses, that software they developed to make it seem like real DPs on set filming every scene, like you said, like you're on set in this Pixar animated world. And what I love so much about Coco, in addition to the incredible animation, is the cinematography. There's so much like handheld in this movie.
Yeah.
In an animated movie, handheld cinematography all over the place. It's very subtle. It's very controlled handheld, which is like one of your favorites for sure. We're using that kind of style for the short film Midnight Ruin that we're doing. but it's all over this movie, just like steady handheld cinematography, and it makes you feel like it's real. It makes you feel like you're there. That's what the whole point of handheld photography is, to bring realism to any kind of story, any kind of production, and it makes you feel like you're there with Coco, with Miguel, with all these characters.
And the filmmakers used it in particularly for this film, not just for that, but also when you're shooting, when the film's cinematography is mostly static and controlled, and then it goes handheld, filmmakers will do that to set a tone for a scene, make you feel anxiety, make you feel fear. If there's something chaotic or troublesome happening with the characters, they'll go handheld, and it makes the audience feel that as well when everything else has been controlled. So it's a great technique. I love how the Pixar animators and filmmakers are utilizing real-world techniques into their animation. It really has what's always separated them from the other animation studios, and obviously the other studios borrowed from them and used their same techniques. But Pixar really has always been the cutting edge of film animation for movies.
One of my favorite parts of the film has got to be Mexican culture, and I think Pixar did an incredible job bringing as much of that richness to the storytelling of this film. You know, I think the Dia de Muertos or Dia de los Muertos as a main motif throughout the entire film, as well as being the thematic storytelling element for dealing with death for children in this story and with that culture. They did a phenomenal job, you know, just being in the real world, but then the land of the dead is so magical and interesting, and just it starts those questions in your mind as a kid if you're watching this for the first time, like what happens after death? Is there a world after this? And then are your loved ones walking amongst us like they are? Like
Is there an afterlife?
Yeah, there's an afterlife, and they pass the bridge, and they come spend time with their families and their loved ones. So long as they're on the ofrenda, if their photos up there.
By the way, I love the blend of technology in the Land of the Dead. Like, there's like high tech technology like that instance. It's really
in the photographs, yeah.
It's great.
Well, it's adapting. You can tell that
it's like an airport.
They have like those like ancient Mayan pyramid structures, but as you get closer and more deep into the Land of the Dead, it becomes more of like a modern city landscape, which is really interesting, skyscrapers and stuff like that. But the filmmakers and animators, they traveled to Mexico 5 times to research about the culture, people, tradition, food, etc., to help define the story and characters of Coco. Among their journeys, they visited Mexico City and Oaxaca. Director Leo Unkrich said of the experience, "I'd seen it portrayed in folk art. It was something about the juxtaposition of the skeletons with bright, festive colors that captured my imagination. It has led me down a winding path of discovery, and the more I learn about Dia de Muertos, the more it affects me deeply." Now, Lee is a great director and has been one of the defining voices
Monsters, Inc.
of Toy Story for a while. So Lee Unkrich he's co-directed several Pixar films. So I'm going to pull up his IMDb right now. He, I can't remember which one it was his first one, but he co-directed Toy Story 3, Finding Nemo. No, Toy Story 3 he directed by himself. Co-directed Finding Nemo. Co-directed Monsters, Inc. Co-directed Toy Story 2. And then Coco he co-directed as well. So he's just been one of the main voices and visionaries at Pixar for a very long time.
And Pixar is like the rare studio where they often make films where there's multiple directors. And it's because the process of making these animated films is so extensive and so intense and requires a lot of work. Whereas with the production, you shoot and then there's a big team for post-production. But the big team post-production is the entire filming process of of movies like this. So the scale of it, it requires sometimes multiple directors. That's why oftentimes Pixar movies will have co-directors, which is very rare for live action films.
And the cast is really, really great. So many recognizable names and voices. So Anthony Gonzalez plays Miguel, the main character. Gael Garcia Bernal is Hector in this movie as well. He's a great actor. Benjamin Bratt, I'm sure you all know from TV and movies as well.
Yeah, from Miss Congeniality.
Yeah. Alana Ubach, Renee Victor, Jaime Camille, Alfonso Auro, Alberto Siguenza. So really great voice acting cast. Gael and Anthony are basically the two leads of this story. They're really terrific in these two roles. And there's so much complexity to the story of this film. And with the story of Miguel, you know, music is such a strong theme throughout this film. The love of music that Miguel has that's coursing through his veins, and how it's just been shunned by his family for generations and generations after they believe that his great-great-grandfather, who we don't discover his true identity until the third act of the film, left his family and abandoned them to pursue a music career. No one ever heard from him really ever since. And so their entire family has just removed music from their life and shunned it and have just stuck to themselves and created a great family generational business of making shoes.
And family is so important and vital to this story. And I feel like they captured Mexican families really well because it's kind of different from, American families traditionally where, you see your cousins like on holidays here and there. But Mexican families and a lot of Latin American families, cousins are like brothers and sisters. Like extended family members are still very much part of the central family. And it's a much tighter and closer unit, even though they'll be separated. They might not be your direct family like a brother or sister, but a cousin or second cousin can just be just as close as a brother or sister is in that kind of culture. And I feel like they captured that really accurately in this film because we have a lot of Latin American friends, and growing up and living so long in California, you see that and how the cultures and families can be living differently.
It's a community-based familial system,
Yeah.
and a matriarchal system in a lot of sense. So, it's kind of a matriarchal film. And what I love also about this film, and more on the music though. Incredible music throughout the entire film.
Giacchino did the score.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if you look closely, the orchestrator of the show, they made him look just like Michael Giacchino, the composer, and it's just like Giacchino's skeleton with his hair, and it's super funny.
I love the mariachi music throughout the entire film. I love the opening Disney theme with the mariachi style of music at the same time.
Yeah.
And when you're watching instruments, especially guitar playing in this film, the fingers are always in the correct place, depending on what chord or note the instrument is being played on that instrument. So they actually nailed where the hands and fingers are supposed to be for the correct moments in parts of a song in tablature, which is really cool.
So that attention to detail is amazing. I wouldn't notice that. It just looks good to me. But for you, you're familiar with it. So for someone like you could be like, oh, that's definitely
a D chord.
Those are the right chords.
So it's really incredible to watch. Actually, the attention to details. Incredible. And so music is so strong in this family, even though they've just eliminated it from their lives, and they don't let Miguel pursue it. Miguel's pursuing it secretly. He built his own guitar. His fretboards he uses nails to distinguish the frets, and also to tighten the strings. He uses nails as well with the screwdriver, and he idolizes this famous Mexican singer guitarist named Ernesto de la Cruz, who passed away after a bell fell on top of him, but not before building the greatest catalog of all time in Mexican music history. And Miguel is obsessed with them.
I feel like Ernesto is inspired kind of by Elvis Presley for being both a musical icon and also a very famous actor who performed music in his movies.
Oh, that's
I feel
possible,
like it was kind of a little bit inspired by Elvis.
He's got that cool vibe too as well. And so Miguel is trying to pursue music secretly, wants to enter this talent show contest, defies his family's rules for him living without music in his life, and tries to enter. His guitar gets smashed by his abuelita, unfortunately. Even though she loves him so much, she smashes the heck out of his
music.
So he steals or borrows Ernesto de la Cruz's guitar at the shrine for Ernesto in the Piazza, the Mariachi Piazza, and immediately gets transferred into the land of the dead because he stole a belonging and a possession of someone who's passed away on Dia de Muertos, which means he's cursed. That's how he gets into the land of the dead.
And that's why he looks like a normal person, not a skeleton.
For now.
So
it's a good opening to set up the
great
big film.
act. It's a great big event for sure. And I love fish out of water stories. Sometimes if they're done right, they're just really exciting, and it always makes for great comedy and surprises, because with fish out of water stories, especially when you're entering a new world or a new realm like this, the audience is Miguel. And so we're along for the ride. We're learning moment by moment what this new world is like. We're experiencing everything fresh. And so I love fish out of water stories in this regard, when you're with the main character and they're the surrogate audience member.
And I love the cultural aspect of Dia de Muertos, Dia de los Muertos, where your ancestors are basically visiting you on an ancestral plane, and you're honoring your dead relatives and your past loved ones, and you put up a photo of them on the ofrenda, which it means offering in Spanish. And in the concept in the film is if someone who's living in the land of the dead in this afterlife, if their photo is not put up on an ofrenda by their family, if they're not being honored by their family, then they cannot cross the bridge to enter the plane to be with their loved ones. And after a period of time, if they're eventually forgotten, they just disappear from the land of the dead, and no one knows what's after that. And so the character Hector, he is being forgotten by his family. We don't know immediately who his family is, who's left, but he's starting to disappear. He has a friend who disappears and fades away because his daughter has forgotten who he is. And so if someone forgets you completely, if no one remembers you, then you just fade away, which is really interesting because it's kind of like real life, where some people are greatly honored and greatly remembered, like celebrities, famous people, religious figures, musicians, just like Ernesto has such a huge offering, a bounty of excess that people around the world offer him, around Mexico, leave for him on Dia de Muertos. And so many other people have nothing. They have no one who remembers him, like Hector, whose daughter is forgetting him. But I also love how this film kind of connects to Citizen Kane, where Coco is kind of like Rosebud. Coco is Rosebud in this movie, if you think about
Rosebud, yeah.
Because Miguel thinks that Ernesto is his great-great-grandfather. He has the photo that's torn up with the head of the person taken off of his great-great-grandmother, and Coco, his great-grandmother, Abuelita,
When she was a
Mama
baby.
Coco, when she was a young child.
Yeah.
He thought Ernesto was the man in the photograph, but it turns out
Because
that
of the guitars, the same guitar Ernesto played.
in the big suit,
yeah.
lo and behold, it was actually Hector the whole time, which is so beautiful to find like your family in the
emotional.
afterlife, because, you know, he meets Ernesto. It's kind of one of those situations where you don't want to meet your hero because he turns out to be a horrible person.
Yeah, and it is a really interesting theme what happens to the souls of the dead in the land of the dead once they are forgotten and they disappear. And it's like that's a really intense thing to put in a kids movie. Like, is that just representing the non-existence? Because is there an afterlife after the afterlife, or do you just not exist anymore? That's a really interesting concept, and I thought it was really great to put into this film. It's because it's really complicated, and I mean it's kind of hard to explain to a kid, and I think some parents might be afraid to talk about something like that. But I thought it was done really beautifully. But also, it created such intense stakes for Hector. And so by the end of the film, when it's revealed that Hector is the great-great-grandfather and Miguel is desperate to save him, he doesn't want Hector to disappear because he knows how terrible a fate that must be. It really created an extreme conflict for the film. And I think that's what really elevated the film in its storytelling, where there was a very good conflict, but we thought it was solved in terms of finding his great-great-grandfather, and then that created a new conflict when they're trapped down in that basin. But then the new conflict is trying to save Hector's soul. And I mean, what's a bigger conflict than that for human beings? So I thought that was really magnificent storytelling.
Yeah, for a kids movie, it's
Yeah.
really incredible. I mean, they've obviously dabbled in death with many of their films. They open 10 minutes and everyone's weeping in that movie. And I think it helps people talk to their kids about death, movies like this, and helps kids understand it. Soul very much focuses on, what happens after you die. Do you have a soul? So I think Coco does a tremendous job by just talking about death with children in a kid's story. And it's done so well with such precision. And I love so much about the film and the culture also, like the ofrenda. It's really fascinating to me. The ofrenda, the offerings, like the altar of where you offer your love and your homage to your loved ones. You put their photo up there, you put some food up there. I love how, what's his name? The dog eats the food. What's his name? Dante. Now, like I said, ofrenda means offering, and it's a place, a home altar during annual and traditionally Mexican Dia de los Muertos celebration. During one of the visits to an Oaxacan family in Mexico for inspiration, director Lee Unkrich paid special attention to a traditional ofrenda that holds pictures of the dead and is also used to offer food during Dia de Muertos. He knows that the family basset hound had to be repeatedly chased away from the ofrenda because it tried to eat the food. He found this so amusing that he included a scene in the movie where Miguel is horrified to find Dante eating food from the ofrenda. I love Dante. He's so funny.
Yeah,
he's
great.
got his tongue hanging out.
I love when he becomes a deity, like what's it called, the spiritual guide.
Oh, hold on, I got that written down
And
somewhere.
he gets all neon colored, and he has like these little tiny wings. It's terrific.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
So to Albrilles, they're colorful spiritual animal inhabitants that reside in the land of the dead.
Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
spirit guide is what they're calling it in the film.
Basically,
Yeah,
he actually kind of is a spiritual guide for
Yeah.
Miguel in the land of the living.
and he can see the dead That's why he's always trying to help Miguel out throughout the film, and then Miguel realizes, oh, you could see them all along. But I love how once he enters the land of the dead, it could have been scary, like meeting skeletons, and it is scary, but the way they animated it and the way they made the skeletons so personable really kept it great for audiences and for kids, because the skeletons, they'll have really beautiful like markings on their faces, and the animation still feels kind of goofy and fun and kid friendly, because it could have been very scary. And what I love about Pixar is their ability to make make their creations and their animations look real with incredible textures and accurate lighting, but they're still cartoony and the way they're animated. So they can make realistic looking humans, but they don't. They choose to still make them feel cartoonish in a way. Same goes for the skeletons, where they could have made them look like real skeletons, but that's no fun. So they animate it. They Pixar-fy it in a way. And I love the small details, like the skeletons, they breathe. Like you can see their chests going up and down, and they don't have to do that, but I'm sure they ran tests where they weren't breathing and they were like, no, that doesn't work. Like you have to be able to interpret, help the audience interpret what's going on, especially kids. So having little details like the skeletons are breathing, even though they don't have any organs or muscle tissue or anything, it still just makes sense visually for us to see that. The way their faces move, it obviously wouldn't work with a skull to like their mouths aren't really moving and changing expression, but it's an animated film. So I love how Pixar time and time again manages to make images feel real, but still animated at the same time.
And they make so many other things about every screenshot, every image look realistic as hell. I mean, the follicles of hair, it looks so real, whether it's a skeleton or a human being. The clothing looks so real. The structures, the ground, the buildings. So everything else looks hyper realistic, but the animation, the big eyes for the humans and the skeletal structures of the people who have passed, it's a really beautiful blend.
And it's the little details too, like the security guard at that area, and his belt is tied around his spine, so his pants are wide on his waist and then super skinny around his spine where his belt buckle is.
This movie's really funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great humor in it, lots of great jokes like that. And one of my favorite parts about the animation and the story is the golden orange flower that's throughout the film. And you first see it when Miguel is walking into the guitar area, the shrine of Ernesto, and he steals the guitar, but when he strums the guitar, he's just surrounded by those golden orange flowers, and those petals are all over the place in the land of the dead. Now, the orange flower seen throughout the film is the Aztec marigold, known as the Mexican marigold or the Cempasúchil. The flower is used in the tradition of Dia de los Muertos in Mexico to guide the deceased to the living, and so this flower is very present on the bridge as the people who have passed in the land of the dead are moving to see the people of the living in that plane.
And speaking of Miguel and his entire quest, I think that this film is a great life lesson for both kids and parents. For kids, you can see the takeaway is the importance of family and respecting and loving your elders and passing your tradition, your family onto the next generation. But for parents, you could definitely say that the lesson for parents in this film is to not stop your children for pursuing their dreams. Miguel's family, obviously, they have pretty good reason for preventing him from playing music and from banning music basically from the family. But you can see the despair it causes Miguel, the unhappiness, and how difficult it is just to be himself. He's not able to express who he is to those who are most important to him. Like, what he wants to do more than anything is just to sing for his family, but they wouldn't allow it. And so I think this film has a great life lesson just for parents, just as much as for kids. And let your kids express themselves. Let them pursue whatever their dream is, no matter how crazy it is. Because if they're intensely passionate about something, it could be good for them. And we shouldn't restrict our kids, and we should let them basically fly at whatever they like to do. And I think that's a great lesson for kids, for families, parents, and children in this movie.
Especially if your kid has a passion like Miguel has for guitar, because it's something that was passed on to him from his great-great-grandfather from Hector that's in his bones. It's in his blood. Music is his life, and his life is music. There's a great quote like that in the film that obviously I think Ernesto stole for one of his movies or TV series, because Ernesto is just a terrible person. You think he's the coolest guy. You think that, Miguel thinks he found him when he talks to Ernesto, and Ernesto's like, I have a great great grandson. This is amazing.
His reaction is everything that happens seems perfect. The way Ernesto initially reacts and shows him off to his friends, and he's respectfully and happily gives him his blessing. He's about to give him his blessing, but he seemed like the perfect great grandfather up until then.
And Miguel, he's actually got a ticking clock. He has to, because he's been cursed, he has to get his family's blessing in order to return to the land of the living, and then he can put up his great-great-grandmother's photograph on the ofrenda so that she can pass on to the plane, cross the bridge to be able to be with her living relatives and living loved ones. But because they know that he's going to play music, she makes that deal with him, like, I'll give you my blessing, but you can't play music ever again. That's when he gets the idea. My great-great-grandfather Ernesto, he's dead too. What if I find him in the land of the dead and get his blessing, which he thinks is a great plan? So, but he has a time limit, because the longer he stays in the land of the dead, the more he is going to become dead and just eventually be a resident of the living of the dead. And he'll be a skeleton there forever.
Ticking clock, man. It works every time.
It really does. And also, Hector's got that ticking clock we were talking about, because his only relative who remembers him is forgetting him. And it was so moving the first time I watched this to find out that it's Coco. Mama Coco is Hector's daughter, who he never got to say goodbye to. He was on the road touring with Ernesto. He told Ernesto that he wanted to basically quit and go be home with his family, because Miguel's great-great-grandmother's name, Abuelita, is Imelda? Yes, Imelda.
Mama Imelda.
Mama Imelda was also a musician, but she wanted to make roots. She wanted to start a family and raise Coco, and then she thought that Hector was abandoning her, running off to pursue his music. Then he passed away. He died there.
But she didn't know. She thought he just ran off and never came back.
She didn't know that he was murdered by Ernesto after he told Ernesto that he did not want to play music on the road anymore. He wanted to be with his family. He loved his daughter Coco so much, and it was so touching to see that he played songs for her in secret at night at the same time, that she sang them at the same time in secret from such far distances away. And Remember Me was written for her, but Ernesto kills him and steals his entire all of his music and all of his quotes. He basically steals his personality and his talent.
Yeah. The letters he wrote to her, he used as the music as well. So you could probably fool me into drinking poison if it was mezcal.
Mezcal?
Yeah, if it was mezcal, I would probably drink it. I love mezcal. But it's really a terrific villain, and because it brings in so much heartache. And Hector is this, you think he's like this down this luck, like goofy guy, and just like, doesn't deserve anything but then you realize everything was taken away from him, and he has the biggest heart of anyone. And man, I just get so emotional just thinking about like the last act of this movie. It's really, really touching. But so many beats of this film work, and through and through, it really is a pitch perfect script. The characters are all terrific. I love so many aspects of it. But speaking of the mezcal, that looks great, but also the food looks good. Like the tamale look. Oh my God, the tamales in the opening.
I love all grandmothers are like this. They just want to feed their grandson so much. And like Miguel is full from eating tamales, and Abuelita asks, "Do you want some more tamales?" He's like, "Oh no." She's like, "I asked if you wanted more tamales." He's like, "Oh, of course I want some more tamales."
Throws 5 more on his plate.
I love grandmas. They're always like that. I used to love going to grandma's place, grandma and grandpa's house, because there'd always be just a ton of bread and butter. Right as soon as you
bread with the sugar on top.
Bread, butter, and sugar. Just make a little sprinkling, or she'd have some meatballs ready to go for snacks. But grandparents, grandmas, they love to feed their grandkids. It's like one of their favorite things in the world to do.
Yeah, I loved it.
Ice cream with movies.
Oh my God, so much ice cream, so many cookies, so many cookies, so much food. But this movie is really special. The music is terrific by Giacchino, but also by the singers. Did Anthony Gonzalez do his own singing?
It sounded like he did.
If he did, he's really fantastic. And I think Gael Garcia Bernal is so great as Hector. He's got that terrific comedy element, and he plays it perfectly. And he's this guy you can't help but love, Hector. And then Benjamin Bratt as the villain of Ernesto is terrific. He does that great accent. It's really terrific and perfect for the character.
Gael's getting that Disney money. He did this, then he did Werewolf by Night. He's the lead.
Oh, yeah.
in that short.
So will he pop up in future projects as that character?
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not sure. I haven't really watched that many MCU projects outside of the movies.
Yeah.
That's one of the only things I've watched in the last 6 months in terms of TV series. But he's the lead in Werewolf by Night. He's terrific in that. He's an awesome actor. I mean, we talked about him at length in our Alfonso Cuarón episode when we talked about Y Tu Mama Tambien, and we compared that to Roma. And he's a tremendous actor. Y Tu Mama Tambien. He's so young. He's with Diego Luna and that co-lead actors in that movie. They're so good together. But he's perfect as Hector. He really, I think, is the heart of the story besides Miguel. But again, Coco being Rosebud, being the key to Hector's survival of being remembered because she's the only relative who remembers him, who's still living. She's the only one that can keep him alive in the living of the dead, which is an interesting concept, being alive in the afterlife. Mm-hmm. And it's so touching when Miguel, who knows Ernesto's music by heart, he knows every song, and everyone at the talent show in the Land of the Dead is playing Remember Me with different instruments and different styles. And when Hector tells Miguel that Remember Me was not a song meant for the world, that song was meant to just be only for Coco, just me and her. That was our secret song for when we were great distances apart at night. We would sing together alone and be with each other and kind of and try to remember each other, even though we were apart. And then, Coco throughout the film, she's losing her memory. She barely recognizes her own daughter, which is really tough. Abuelita is so worried about her. And by the end of the film, as soon as Hector almost sacrifices himself to give Miguel his blessing, even though he's got, who knows, hours to live, days to live in the land of the dead until Coco forgets him completely, he gives Miguel his blessing to return to the land of the living. And the way that Miguel is able to make Coco remember her father is to play Remember Me, just like he used to play for her in her bedroom when she was a little girl.
Stop crying.
I'm getting choked up just thinking about it right now.
Just an hour ago, I was I was weeping.
It's so sweet.
Oh my God.
It's so touching. It's heartbreaking. And it makes you really sad to find out that he missed out on her entire life because, when she passes eventually at the end of this film, she's in the land of the dead now. And obviously you freeze in time of when you die. That's what age you are forever in the land of the dead.
Although everyone looks like a skeleton. So.
Yeah, everyone looks like a skeleton. But Coco's, it's like a little old abuela. And her father Hector is holding her hand. It's
she
very
looks
sweet.
pretty. She feels youthful though. She's moving pretty well.
She's got a Dumbledore quality to her.
Yeah. She she jumps up to hug him.
Yeah, I think. Well, everyone in the land of the dead is very
agile.
Yeah,
very agile
and spring.
There's no joints, so you don't feel any. There's no what's the element called? Arthritis.
There's no arthritis in Land of the Dead.
It's just bones.
So it's really touching to see that even though they've missed out on Coco's entire life together and his entire life with Coco together, they still love each other so much, and family still comes first, which is, the main theme of the film for Miguel to learn was to put family first because he was refusing his family. He didn't want to be part of his family anymore because they wouldn't let him play music. But it's compromise on both sides. He can put his family first, and they can also let him play music at the same time. But it's a great family ending where they all learn the truth. We all learn the truth about Ernesto, and instead of his statue saying "Remember me," it says "Forget you," which is really great. Even though how could they prove it in the real world?
No, they proved it with the poems.
Oh, the poems.
So Coco kept all the letters and poems that Hector wrote for her.
Sorry.
And they were the lyrics that were in all of Ernesto's songs.
You're right.
So clearly didn't do his research.
Clearly didn't do my research at all. I was just busy crying the whole time.
Yeah.
The last 10 minutes of this movie.
Let's move into our intermission.
Let's
How
do
about
it.
that? Yeah.
Before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. Get awesome perks like personalized messages, personalized videos. We have 5 different tiers: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100 tiers. Each one comes with a bunch of different goodies. Be sure to go to patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast to support our show today.
This episode is sponsored by movieposters.com. Use our special promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today. Movieposters.com has a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. Again, head on over to movieposters.com and use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today.
Now, let's get into our intermission and begin with the movie quote competition. You ready, pal?
Let's hear it.
As the sound of the playgrounds faded, the despair set in. Very odd what happens in a world without children's voices.
Children of Men.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Good pick. I just watched it.
Thanks. Did you? I haven't seen it in a while. I got to give her a rewatch.
Yeah, I watched it like 2 weeks ago.
And maybe we'll do an episode on it.
It's a great movie. Top 25 for me. Okay.
Let's just start doing goated movies.
Yeah, why not, man? Why not? If they had told me it was going to be 15 years, would it have been easier to endure?
Old boy?
Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah. Let's go.
I did that one for you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's one of my all-time faves. All right, guess this movie release year. The Skin I Live In.
2009.
2011.
Oh, man.
Highly recommend that movie.
Antonio Banderas.
So crazy.
Guess this movie release year. Doctor Strange Love.
1966.
64. Damn. Very close. Very close.
All right. Salma Hayek and Antonio. Oh, pop quiz time. Sorry.
Oh, I got
But I love talking about Salma Hayek.
Oh, yeah. We could just talk about her.
Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas have been in several movies together. Can you name 3?
Okay. Spy Kids. El Mariachi. No, the other one. What's it called?
She's not in El Mariachi.
The sequel. What's it called?
Robert Rodriguez directed it.
I know it's the part of the trilogy. I don't know.
You don't have any other guesses besides those?
No.
So, you're thinking of, well, we got Desperado.
Desperado.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Frida. Frida actually has a great cameo
Antonio's in Frida?
He is...
I didn't know that.
Yes, he plays David...
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in that movie. Yeah, he's in that movie. But Frida also has a cameo in Coco, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Then also Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. And The Hitman's Bodyguard. I believe they're both in. Yeah. Salma. Is Antonio in those? Actually, I don't know if Antonio's in those.
I don't think he is.
Okay, so Antonio's not in those, but he is in all the other ones with her. So they're in like 6 movies together.
I didn't know she was in the Puss in Boots movies.
Mm-hmm. She plays Kitty Softpaws.
Of course.
Of course.
I don't think I've seen them.
And also, I think they're both in 4 rooms. I think they both might be in 4 rooms.
Yeah, probably. They made it around that time.
I know Antonio is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're in a bunch of movies together. They work together quite a bit. Let's move on to your pop quiz question.
Ready?
Ready.
Who directed The Green Mile?
That was directed by, what's his name? The guy who did Shawshank.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Why am I blanking?
He did The Walking Dead too, season 1.
WTF. What? I can't think of his name.
Frank
Darabont.
Darabont.
Damn it.
For bonus credit too, He appears in Entourage for a multi-episode arc, directing Vincent Chase in what movie?
I have no idea.
Medellin.
Medellin!
Remember that?
Yeah.
So Darabont's the director of it.
That's so funny. All right. My streaming recommendation for this episode, before we get into haters and stuff, is... Sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
Go ahead, man. You already started.
Kronos on HBO Max from Guillermo del Toro.
Great movie. Great movie. My recommendation is Blood Simple, also on HBO Max by the Coen brothers. Now let's get to the haters, of which we have many.
Always.
Many haters today.
Real ones?
We have no real ones, but
Okay.
well, someone called us idiots today.
What'd they say?
Well, I wrote the Aliens crew hated Ridley Scott, but in the clip it's James Cameron. I just accidentally typed in Ridley
Gotcha.
Scott with my brain. He called us. He said, "Get your text right, idiots." So I blocked his ass. All right, here's the haters. Well, first is my favorite quote of the week. My favorite. You get it. This is great. So I posted a clip about Tom Cruise learning how to get to a pro level of pool playing for the Hustler sequel, The Color of Money. And then Tyler Martin, 1962, wrote, "Good thing he didn't star in Boogie Nights."
What?
Because he would have become a porn star.
That's pretty funny.
You got it. Took you a second, but you got it.
Yeah.
Next up,
That's pretty good.
the Kitty Jor. Resubscribed. Then I seen Anthony's hoodie. Took the hint, so I unsubscribed because I was wearing an unsubscribed hoodie. And then Tim Spoots, 86.2. You bozos. Peter's brother paid for the trip in Home Alone. Unsubscribed. That's how we afforded the trip for like 9 people to Paris.
Yeah.
And then Dirk Diggler. No Luna in this episode. Unsubscribed.
Unsubscribed.
Michael Robert Anderson. You didn't mention the Ant Boy trilogy in your trilogy episode. The single most important superhero franchise of all time. Unsubscribed. Stone Cinema wrote, "Everybody knows the best trilogy of all time is Kung Fu Panda." Unsubscribed.
Pretty good.
Which has wrote, "All I'll say is if Paddington 2 isn't on the list, you will find me unsubscribed." But it's not a trilogy, though.
2 movies, right?
2 movies.
It's that good, though, right?
Yeah, it's that good, yeah. Dirk Diggler, the Austin Powers movies weren't rated R. Unsubscribed. Because I said they were rated R. And then Paul Cantu. Congrats, fellas. Well deserved on being in the top 1% of podcasts. 2023 will be even bigger for you guys, and I'm excited for the ride. Assuming I don't unsubscribe, keep up the Timmy and Cavill content and give the people what they want. William Henry Cleve, when are you going to do a review on Golden Face Origins? Brother Smith 05 in our Spotify clip about the sets. The set should have been decorated from the start. Unsubscribed. Keep up the great work. This is my favorite podcast. And then Mike Watt. Mike was taking 1, 2, 3. Actually got us on this one. James didn't even have a table. Well, now neither of you have a table. Unsubscribed.
Neither of you have a table.
Kev to the B. I thought the origin streak was broken. I almost hit unsubscribe.
Almost.
But with the Rocket Raccoon Guardians Origins.
Woo. Thanks, Guardians 3. Thanks, James Gunn.
All right. And then we have a quote from a fan for you.
For me?
Yeah. I'd like to think if you're seeing me, you're having the worst day of your life.
What is this? To think if you're seeing me, you're having the worst day of your life. It sounds so goddamn familiar.
This is from Ryan Patsalides. Ryan Patsalides.
If you're seeing me, you're having the worst day of...
I like to think that if you're seeing me, you're having the worst day of your life.
I can't remember, man.
Nightcrawler.
Oh, my goodness.
Good one, right?
That was a great quote.
It's a great quote. Thanks,
Great
Ryan.
movie. We have a great 5-star review
Nice. Let's hear it.
from an Italian friend of ours. So his title and his review is
Professional Italian?
Disiscrito, which means unsubscribed in Italian. I'm a long-time listener jumping over from Spotify to write this review. Wow, thanks so much for, first of all, just jumping over to Apple Podcasts,
Appreciate
iTunes
that.
to write the review. Anyone can do it. All you need is an email address.
Yeah.
I found these 2 dudes on TikTok. I saw them dressed up like elves talking about how great Lord of the Rings is. From that moment forward, I knew I found my favorite podcast, despite what some haters think. These guys put so much time, effort, and research into each episode. They have helped me develop my love for movies and helped me understand movies I never really got on the first time around. Siete bravi ragazzi, vi voglio bene. We love you too, pal.
Grazie mille.
Thank you so much. Man, I saw these two guys dressed as elves talking about how great Lord of the Rings is. We gotta do that more often, I guess.
Not gonna lie, I'm in the middle of watching the extended cuts right now. I've been on it for the last 4 days.
I did the Lord of the Rings extended cuts. I want to say a few years ago, and it's like a commitment because they're like 4.5 each one.
It's like a mini series.
It's crazy.
It's unbelievable how I don't think I've seen the extended cuts.
Oh, you haven't? Have you watched Fellowship full through?
Oh yeah.
And what about Two Towers?
I've seen I just finished Two Towers last night.
So you just have Return left for
Return,
extended.
yeah.
What do you think about them? Do you like them better than the theatrical?
I like the Fellowship one better. The Two Towers, there's definitely some things that they didn't need, but I like pretty much all the additional footage and scenes from Fellowship.
How do you feel about them cutting the death of Saruman?
I think it works fine. I think it would have been cool to see though in the theatrical cut.
I think it doesn't really work as well if they put it in the theatrical cut. When I watched the extended edition, I like that scene. It's cool to see how he dies, but it's also
impaled.
like, they don't really need it.
No, they didn't need it. Yeah. But there's things where you can see the editing and the way they cut it. Actually, it does really work, even though you're not seeing important stuff in the deleted scenes. I think they did honestly an amazing job cutting the films down without taking away from the story, because there's over an hour, 15 minutes at least in each one extra. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of stuff. So it's really impressive what that editor did, being able to make it still great films and great stories. But I'm just like in awe of how much shit they shot.
There's so much more. It's crazy.
There's so many scenes. I'm like, I can't believe they shot all this stuff.
You know, you found a real one, like in a significant other, if they're cool to watch the extended version of Lord of the Rings with you.
I think I actually have seen all the extended in the past. It's just only one time through, I think.
Yeah, it's intense. But I prefer the theatrical cuts, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think they just flow so much better.
I think the Two Towers theatrical cut is better.
All right, let's get back into Coco.
Coco.
That's what this episode's about. Now, as great as this film is, and as much as I love pretty much every aspect of it, I do have a major con to Pixar's Coco.
Let's hear it.
There is not that much Spanish being spoken in this film. I would have loved to see more Espanol in Coco. Like, I know that Blue Beetle coming out with DC, that's going to be, I've heard like 50%, 60% of that film is going to be in Espanol, which is fantastic. Now, I know it's 2017, so I think, there's a cultural shift in film, and that's more included now in movies coming out, which is great. I just wish that they had a little more Spanish in this film versus just a couple words here and there and some of the lyrics in songs, because I think it would have been a huge benefit to the story, to the culture of Mexico in the film. But I understand why they didn't do it, but I would like to see more.
I actually completely agree. And watching...
Actually, wow.
It's a good point. Because I just watched it, like I said, like an hour ago, and there were definitely moments where I was like, oh, I wish that would have been in Spanish, in their native tongue. Especially when Coco is speaking, it would make sense that she maybe doesn't know English, and being that old and growing up a couple of generations before. And also, the music could have really worked if most of it was in Spanish. Obviously, Remember Me, you can keep that in English, but I think a lot of the songs could have worked out really well in Spanish, especially nowadays where so many people are watching everything with subtitles, with captions on.
Even English shows.
Yeah, even English shows and movies.
English speakers.
No, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong
with that. No judgment. But I think I would have liked to see definitely much more Spanish in the film, because they did such a remarkable job with the culture and with the design of the film and with the cultural significance and historical accuracy and basically love for that community. I think it definitely, there are moments where I'm like, oh, I wish they were speaking Spanish. It would make a lot more sense for sure. And going back to the animation, what I found so impressive, like I said earlier, is really the lighting. And obviously it's extremely extravagant and so massive in scale in the Land of the Dead, where you have these massive environments and incredible colors and just beautiful set design, and the creativity is just on full display. I'm sure all the animators were just given like free reign to do whatever. And I love the neon looks of the spirit guides. But what I find most impressive is the subtle lighting in the real world circumstances, whether it be the lighting in a room or the patio being lit in an evening with just Edison bulbs. The lighting techniques they use in this film are really incredible, and I prefer like the minimalist lighting scenes, like Coco's secret room. It's just the lighting from the television and a couple of things he has shown about the room, or the way the house is lit in the evening. It's just really remarkable what these animators can do, and they create these programs that basically create a digital world. It's like it's the fact that it just comes from coding is unbelievable. But they're incredible artists. But I really enjoy the minimalist lighting and the cinematic quality to it, especially in the more smaller scale scenes.
I really love how the living and dead are like walking amongst each other in this film, and both worlds are kind of on top of each other from the perspective of the land of the dead and those who have passed. I think it's really fascinating because so many people are, spiritual, and they think that there are spirits among us, and it's really cool to see that in the movie, like shown in a peaceful way, in a positive way, not like being haunted or anything like that, but just your loved ones are surrounded by you. But also at the same time, it's like, do you want to exist forever?
What's also interesting is the land of the dead has its own community, has its own thing, its own civilization. People work jobs, people, it's like working at the airport. There's security guards, like people have businesses, and some people are poor and some people are extremely wealthy, and in a way the more remembered you are in the real world, the more wealth you have and power you have in the land of the dead, in the spirit world, which is why Ernesto has such an extravagant lifestyle, because he's so famous and he gets so much from the people in the real world. It's interesting to see how there still is a social hierarchy in the land of the dead, and people like Hector are just basically like in a way homeless, and they're just getting by, and they don't have anything, and they're living on the streets in a way where you have the affluent and elites are still living it up, and celebrities are celebrities forever, and they get to live that lifestyle for like all eternity, I guess, until they are eventually finally forgotten. Although some people will probably never be forgotten, depending on the size of their celebrity and their fame. But I like how they didn't make it just a paradise for everyone. It was kind of a reflection of the real world in a lot of ways, which I think was the right choice in the direction to make with the film.
The power of music also is so big in this film. It's so important because even though Ernesto stole Hector's music, killed him, became super famous, got what he deserved with that giant bell falling on top of him.
Again.
In the afterlife, he's still very famous and everything. His music, Hector's music, still found his family. It still found Miguel. And Miguel was still inspired by the music that, even though he was watching Ernesto sing it and take ownership of it, it's still his great-great-grandfather's music. And it's inside of his bones, inside of his blood. And that's probably what connected him so much. And yes, watching those tapes of Ernesto connected with him, a life that he'd always dreamed of having, but to actually live it, to be proud to have Hector as a father when he finds out who, great-great-grandfather when he finds out who he truly is. It's really special, and just the power of music transcending love, transcending generations. It's really fascinating.
And also it changes Miguel's entire pursuit and motivation for being a musician, where at first he wants to be famous like Ernesto. He wants to be the greatest musician ever. He's basically just chasing fame and celebrity. And by the end of the film, family is more important than anything. And Miguel learns that the true purpose for making great music or great art is to share it with others, not to make money, but also to put love into it. And Hector shows him by saying himself, like, I didn't make Remember Me to be famous and to make money. I wrote it for my daughter. And so Miguel learns that pursuing music shouldn't be for materialism or attention. It should just be for the love of the music.
And I think there's clearly a real world metaphor between the U.S. and Mexico in this film with the border and the security and a person who's passed away and the living of the dead. They can only cross the border to be with the living if they've had an offering from a loved one, the photo put up on the ofrenda. Otherwise, you can't get across the border. Just like Hector tries to sneak through the border at the beginning of the film. I think it's a blatant metaphor subtly for adults to obviously pick up on, but maybe for kids to start understanding.
A blatant, subtle metaphor.
A blatant for adults, but maybe subtle for kids.
Got it.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes. I think you're absolutely right. I think 100%, and it's a great correlation and a great parallel to a real world circumstance, which is also like to have the resonant themes of social classes as well. I think is just a great thing to add into this film. That it's not like hammered down your throat, but it's shown to you just through the character and through action, which is the best way to do it.
It is the best way to do it. It's very nuanced.
Yeah, nuanced.
You got anything else on Coco?
Other than it's just an emotional journey, and it's. I'm telling you, I was weeping 2 hours ago. I was crying my eyes out.
I've seen this 3 times. I was weeping too. Like it still gets me.
It's so good, and it's really beautiful film. Terrific story, amazing music, memorable characters, and really important themes that relate to everybody. No matter what culture you're from, you can really completely relate to everything that's going on in a meaningful way. And I think that's the whole point of storytelling.
Strong themes about family, remembering your family, remembering past loved ones and the dead. And I think my favorite line in this entire movie is, when Hector is trying to, for probably the 100th time, talk to Melda. He's rescued Miguel from that basin, and he's brought him to their family with the giant lion and everything that's been trying to find Miguel, tracking him down. And Miguel says to his great-great-grandmother Imelda about Hector, you don't have to forgive him, but don't forget him, which is really touching and really moving. And I think that's my favorite quote in the whole film.
That's great.
It's a really beautiful line.
I think everything that Coco says at the end is just it kills me.
Oh my goodness.
I used to sing that with my papa. Oh my God.
Miguelito. Love Coco. This is such a tremendous film. I think it's top tier Pixar. It's, I think, their last great movie. I think, they haven't really had anything that's
They made
matched
good
this.
ones.
Yeah. Like Encanto's good. Luca's good. But I
good,
think this is a special one. Top 5 for me. Top 3 for you. It's tremendous. It's phenomenal. And I love every minute of it.
Samesies.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to our episode on Pixar's Coco. Please become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. And thank you to Blackmagic Design for sending us these awesome Blackmagic G2 6K cinema cameras, pocket cinema cameras. They are phenomenal. They record up to 6K cinema log raw, Blackmagic raw, which is incredible. If you're an independent filmmaker, videographer, can't recommend them enough. They're very affordable, couple grand a pop for some of the highest quality, low-budget cinema cameras on the market today. Thanks, Blackmagic Design.
Adios, amigos.
This episode of Raiders of the Lost Podcast was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Luke Exelston, Tyler McFly, Darren Singleton, Anthony DeMeo, John Agraz, Becca Keene, Cody Moen, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Cam. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel.